The quarterback landscape is changing in the 2023 NFL and Dynasty offseason. We got Derek Carr, Daniel Jones, big contracts. Lamar Jackson is out there with a non-exclusive tag. Aaron Rodgers. And we have Geno Smith back with the Seahawks as one of the key points here. That and more this week on the Footballguys Dynasty Show, talking quarterback landscape. And Jordan, quarterbacks drive the ancillary value. It's not the ancillary value and, Derek Carr changing teams that is going to have a bigger impact on the quarterback position. It's vice versa. Quarterbacks drive the other value here for Dynasty.
Yeah, and it was a wild day. I mean, it's been a wild couple of days with the Derek Carr, with the Lamar Jackson news, with Daniel Jones coming right down to the wire, Geno Smith. I mean, it's been I got to update all my tracking matrices on the quarterbacks, right? So it's been a wild day, and I think there is some fallout from this. I mean, I think the Daniel Jones one's interesting. Listen, I don't think it's any surprise that I think this is an overpay, right? I mean, he signed for more years than he has games with more than 2 touchdowns passing in his career, right? He's got 3 such games, 0 since 2019, right? All 3 of them were in 2019. He's not had a 3 touchdown passing game in the past 3 seasons. So, we kind of look at this and are a little bit skeptical, a lot of it skeptical, I think, right? But they were kind of stuck, right? They didn't have a good answer. And I think if you had a dynasty takeaway from this, it's kind of like you got to have a plan in advance. And, do you want to sort of lock in mediocrity, right? I mean, it's a classic agency problem with them, right? It's really hard when you're sort of stuck in the middle. Do you want to sort of bottom out and risk losing your job? Or do you want to say, all right, I want to go, I just kind of want to stay in the middle and hope to strike right? I mean, that's kind of been what the Giants have done for the past 2 decades. Right. So I guess it's not terribly surprising that this is the direction that they went as a franchise, but it's interesting. And I just wonder how they're going to surround them with weapons, right? They bring back Barkley on a franchise tag. They don't have a ton of, everyone thinks that they're just going to be able to bring in all these assets. But the problem with paying a quarterback $40 million, even though the cap number for him is like 20 this year, the problem with doing that is then you lose stuff, right? You lose a weapon, right? We've seen this with other guys. We've seen it with Dak Prescott. We've seen it with Patrick Mahomes, right? We've seen it with Josh Allen. We just, when you get to this spot, it costs a lot of money and you start losing guys. And how are they going to add a wide receiver 1 to this team? I don't know how it's going to happen. So I'm all eyes, I'm all ears, but I don't really love it for him. I don't love it for them. I don't love it for him.
Yeah, pre-combine, I did a skill position mock draft for the NFL, and looking at, first 3, 4, 5 rounds and saying every team gets a skill position player. And for the Giants, I mean, I had them earmarked for Jackson Smith-Njigba at 26 overall. And I'm not sure he lasts that long. I know that's sort of him fading a little bit. The wide receiver position, I would say after the combine, isn't looking quite as rosy. It's more of a sub-sized position. Njigba, I think, would really offer something in terms of collecting a bunch of targets early on. But like you said, I mean, they have to do it on the cheap. Obviously, rookie contract would be cheap because you pay a quarterback 20 when previously he was getting 5 or 8. You're taking away a viable wide receiver. That's a free agent contract. Yeah, that would be Juju Smith-Schuster and maybe even someone else, in terms of money out there in the free agent pool to add. They got Wan'Dale Robinson, who was hurt last year. We'll see what he can provide in year 2. But, tight end, we're still check and watch, see if they can provide something there post Evan Ingram. So, I think, you say this is our build around guy, and we've said it before. You start losing money, losing pieces. I want to remind of 2 things, because you kind of said all these moves that we have going on. It's a week before. It seems like the NFL has figured out ways that now, I used to get blindsided because it's like, oh, well, that first, I think it's the 14th this year. It'll be hitting before our show next week. And that's when, everyone becomes a free agent. But what happened? It usually becomes the day before. It's actually the day before where we get a lot of news about contracts lined up and all this. And now look at this. It's going to be daily. It seems like from now until then. If anything, next Tuesday is probably going to be the quietest day of the next 6-7 days. So just number 1, the NFL never stops. Number 2, this is my annual reminder. NFL team inertia, which is we get excited. We put out all these lists. We do it in November and December. We look at who's a slated free agent. The players that are generally worth it aren't going anywhere. These teams will figure it out. Everyone thought the Giants, Daniel Jones is going to do something. They're going to tag Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley is just going to walk out there, into the forest. No, he's not. That's not really this is just, the Kirk, we were talking before the show, Kirk Cousins scenario is such a rare one. He went all the way through the system, all the check boxes, and went through the franchise tag twice. And Washington completely, bobbled that whole situation for 3 or 4 years. And then he got to walk into free agency, a true rare scenario. We actually talked about, are there ways for Lamar Jackson to do that? Because he's getting partly down that road to be able to go there in a couple of off seasons here. So I just, when in doubt, the players that are actually worth something and the NFL doesn't know that they're completely washed up or what, or the team values them, they're really not leaving. That rarely occurs. And quarterback is just almost unheard of. Tom Brady had to get to the point of we think he's eroding. We think, and then he got to construct some contracts where he had some flexibility. And man, it just, these quarterbacks, again, we saw Derek Carr change teams. And the interesting thing is I get people that ask oh man, how does this affect his dynasty value? Well, Derek Carr is still who he is. Here's the interesting part. You put him in a different uniform and are his weapons tremendously worse? I would say no, and I would say he's in a division that is exploitable as opposed to one where he's gotten beat up. The AFC West is not exactly where you want to be. You go over to the NFC South and things are looking a little better. So, he's got some building blocks to work on, and he's a guy that we've questioned the ceiling already. So you question the ceiling. He's a classic, QB2 type that, some QB1 moments, but he's probably going to be that placeholder for you where you're seeking upside and super flex elsewhere. Does that really change going over to New Orleans? I don't think so. Daniel Jones, we're still waiting for his first top 12 year. Checks watch. 4 years in. 4 years in. And he's getting a big time contract. I wouldn't call this, a super max, bend the needle of what quarterbacks now get. But I think when it's $40 million a year, the prorated average there, we're trending in a direction where you're like, Daniel Jones, he's the one getting that. So again, I think we both circled to the Geno deal, and I think there's some NFL draft interesting wrinkles here as well. But he got a pretty affordable deal, and Seattle, in my opinion, is doing it the right way because they paid a fraction of Carr and a fraction of Daniel Jones, and yet we just saw a year from Geno Smith that was better than what we've seen collectively from those two guys for basically a decade combined.
Yeah, and I think the Geno Smith one, when you look at the Geno Smith contract, it's being reported that it is basically 3 years, $75 million, right? That's already, again, that's a fraction of what the number is on Daniel Jones. But then you look, the deal is $40 million guaranteed at signing, and then it's basically $28 million, $22 million, and $25 million is kind of the cash flows through the deal. Basically, we don't know the exact numbers, but it's basically a 2-year, $50 million deal. They could get out of this after a year and basically pay him $12 million next year. I think they're sitting dead red at 5 with quarterback. I think that this is what this is, right?
No. Now, are you saying that because of the contract? Did this actually push you more towards that direction as opposed to him getting 4 for 130 or something like that?
Yeah, if they had gone the Daniel Jones, route, where they're like, all right, we're going to lock in, we're basically going to lock in 2, if not really 3 years of this, just because the cap numbers and there's some guaranteed stuff. It looks like into the 3rd year for Daniel Jones, depending on how it breaks down. We'll have to see. But that's going to be a lot harder. It doesn't make any sense to really bring in a rookie quarterback with that contract. But you look at the Geno Smith deal, and this is essentially the same situation that the Raiders did with Derek Carr. They could get out of it after a year, right? They're going to take on more money and actually have some commitments into year 2 on Geno Smith, where Derek Carr's deal last year with the Raiders didn't. So they could kind of walk away from him. It didn't have any guarantees in it at, this year and beyond. So they were able to just kind of walk away from him. That's not exactly the case with Seattle, but it's much closer than it is the new Derek Carr deal. It's much closer than it is the new Daniel Jones deal. I think like they're sitting at 5. I mean, that's right. If there's a chance that they get a top 2 or 3 quarterback on their board there, right? I think they're sitting dead red quarterback, right? That would be,
and it's a bonus pick because
exactly.
they double dip. They talk about all the NFL draft shows about how you got 2 picks, maybe one of them is a luxury one. You kind of feel like you can truly build for the future, and it doesn't have to be an overt need. And Seattle kind of wins both ways, right? I mean, they can take a peak for a whole year. I mean, now again, a lot of backups play. So to say Geno Smith makes it through the year, first of all, playing well, second of all, healthy, so that you don't force, your QB2, the guy that was drafted in the mid, the early first there, that you don't have to play him. All these plans of like someone's not going to play, they're going to play, generally like the Patrick Mahomes, a little masquerade there late in the season, and we put him on ice, and then he's our week 1 starter. Like that sounds great, but it just does not. Usually the NFL and injuries and play and all that usually doesn't cooperate. But yeah, I think they're a perfect spot for, especially, let's face it, probably there you're looking at Levis or Anthony Richardson. So 2 of the more viewed as developmental guys of like, it would be nice to get them incorporated more and put them on ice to develop in the back view longer, or have a starter. And that's why we mentioned Detroit too. I mean, those are 2 good spots in that zone that they could really take developmental quarterbacks and ones that they can progress a little slower than guys expected to play early on, as like Stroud and Young would probably be projected in that role. And I'll tell you, Jordan, I think we mentioned it a few weeks ago, but I stare at my quarterback rankings, and it's just, I know you look more into buckets and profiles, and it's a little more. I'm not gonna say generalized. It's a little more. Is tiering a good word? Right.
Yes.
I mean, again,
Yep.
We both do tiers. But yeah. So you look at more at profile tiers, and I look at Geno Smith, and it's interesting because I still have him at a spot where, what we saw was very good, but now with the contract, you don't feel quite as good, but yet we see the drop off at quarterback, but it's in a very interesting zone. I mean, I have him around the guys like Derek Carr, Stafford, Jordan Love. I mean, we got a lot of question marks, and you could write stories about how any one of those type players, it goes relatively well. You could also say in 12 months, there's a reason you ranked him at QB 20 or beyond, because things change. And I would ask you this. So we have divergent contracts. Derek Carr looks a lot more stable in terms of his contract. We just haven't seen the ceiling. Geno Smith could put up another top 8 to 10 season right here. And that's independent of them drafting someone. That's independent of, is he the starter for Seattle in 2024? And then Matthew Stafford, are we going to see him with a longer leash, a longer duration in terms of how much he plays? Is the retirement talk in 2024 a reality? Jordan Love looks like he's going to start, but talk about lack of seeing much. I mean, do you have any big thoughts on those guys in that sort of range of, we could see top 10 seasons? We could also see maybe 0 from that collective group from that's a downside.
Yeah, we're talking like late teens into the 20s, kind of what you're thinking of?
Yeah, like maybe 18 to 25, 26. I mean, somewhere in that zone, I would guess that's where consensusly a lot of people view those players.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, right, like I look at this and I'm like, I think Geno could kind of play his way into a profit on this deal, right? Like we might be back here a year from now where he's trying to, renegotiate this deal more favorably to him, right? I mean, he was a really good quarterback this year, like really good, right? Top 10 in fantasy, right? Top 10 probably in most advanced metrics in the NFL. I mean, if you do that again, you really back that up, he probably leaves himself room to say, like, we need to re-up this and go deeper on this relationship that we have, right?
Well, but here's the other thing. He'll have the inside info on if they draft someone, and let's say they draft Levis, and he's like, he's been there in that QB room with them. He knows, like, he's going to know exactly, like, oh yeah, it seems like, I'm playing, and we're playing pretty well, but Levis seems like he's going to be their guy next year, or I don't have a lot of leverage here. And again, if he's playing well, that's going to parlay into something else for another team, maybe a trade, or like we have to play Levis in 2024 or something like that. But if he also sees this guy doesn't get it, like he has no clue, like he's going to be like, I got all the leverage. You want to start this guy? Have fun. And so I just think he's going to have a lot of information and intel on a rookie that could potentially take his job in a worst case for him. And then, in a best case, it's like, this guy's on the bus track.
Yeah, right. So there's some stuff there. I mean, I look at kind of this tier and I kind of think like, where does Jared Goff fall on it? Right, it's probably above this tier, right? Like he's probably
I have him above that tier.
Yeah, and so you kind of like trying to make a determination on what the bet you want to make is. I mean, Geno's not young, right? Would you rather kind of take the unknown swing at a guy like Jordan Love? I mean, that's and we've talked about this before. I think a lot of these decisions come down to team building, right?
State of your depth chart, right? What do you have at QB1? What do you have at QB2/3 along with player X here?
Right. What's the bet you're trying to make? Right. I mean, I think if I was trying to make a bet this year, like I think Geno Smith pairs well with, if you're going to go a young quarterback, maybe you're and I got Kyler Murray. Right. And you say, I'm not sure what I'm going to get this year. If I get anything from them, it's gravy. But Geno Smith, I can kind of play him and be a bridge between basically this year and whenever Kyler Murray comes back, or a bridge between this year and, whenever I'm ready to play this rookie that I'm going to take in the top 5 of this class. Those sorts of things. I think he makes a lot of sense there. I think I'd rather take, if I'm making a bet sort of deeper at the position and I've got my quarterbacks are Allen and Mahomes, right? I'd rather take a huge swing on a guy like Jordan Love, right? Just because, like, give me the potential that this guy's a top 10 quarterback. Yeah, maybe that's lofty, right? But I'm kind of shooting that, where I don't think that's in Geno's range of outcomes. That's conceivably in the range of outcomes for a guy like Jordan Love, right? Top 10, top 12, kind of depending on what happens there. He could have a monster year and sort of come from deep and look. I mean, there's some pieces there that I think are pretty attractive, and they seem pretty convinced that he can play. So, I'm sort of weighing those in, right? So I think that range is almost entirely, and again, that's kind of why I tier, because that's a range where I think it kind of matters what bet you want to make, right? What are you trying to do? And I think that tier will reflect, once you sort of answer that question, I think the bets in that range have become pretty apparent.
Yeah, it seems like the dynasty market coming up on Geno Smith. So, some of the deals in the past week or so, it's trending towards him being worth a first, and possibly more. And we had a discussion, I want to say even starting the off season, that was not the case, more like seconds. And people were really, I'm not sure. But now with this contract, that's going to elevate a little bit of just, we feel confident he's going to be the starter this year. And like you said, I mean, he could go somewhere else. And this parlays some production in his 30s that, even if it's not with Seattle. But yeah, I think in terms of, as you said, like what's the bet, and what's the puzzle pieces going together, because we have to realistically ask ourselves, is Derek Carr going to be a reason or a fueling point? Yes, he's there. He's going to post. But, these QB 18, 20, 22, 24 seasons, it's not really moving the needle much. And I think people sometimes forget that. Yes, you have the solidity of saying, I feel confident in 2024, he's going to be the starter for the Saints based on that contract. That's great. But you also have to say, I mean, picking up the Ryan Fitzpatricks of the world and, who is the streaming special, for this part of the year, just spending waiver dollars, or being proactive, getting some back, the Andy Daltons of the world added on to deals. Like, I think he'll see some starts. Like, you just pass job that together and you can make a Franken quarterback that almost replicates Derek Carr probably, for a chunk of the season. So I think the whole idea of I have a solid starter, that is almost a trap. And it parallels the NFL, right? I mean, these NFL teams getting this like, oh, I'm going to have a solid starter. What's that going to do? 10-7? What's that going to do? Out in the first round of the playoffs? Or like the Giants, right? I mean, they won a game and then they got their doors blown off. Like, it's okay. That you punched your ticket. What does that mean? Let's get into the second round of the NCAA tournament. What does that do?
Right.
So,
I think if Washington actually trades for Lamar Jackson and that Daniel Jones signs his contract and then it's the worst quarterback in his division. I mean, wouldn't that be like the most?
Getting $40 million, right?
Right.
Or,
I'd be like, okay, like you kind of like this is what you got. I don't know. I look at these things and it's an interesting, it's just an interesting directional bet. You know what I mean? I think it's with all of that, and it's funny because like you look at the Daniel Jones contract and then you look at the Mahomes contract and you're like, the Mahomes contract's probably the greatest deal that any team has ever signed in the history of the NFL.
Right. Every year it's going to get better. Right. It's going to look. Is it Tom Brady like in terms of look at what the Chiefs can do around Patrick Mahomes? Because they won a Super Bowl and it's like, ooh, they had to go real lean and mean at wide receiver. Like, so they paid about what, 20 million for, I think, Juju and Marcus Valdes-Scantling combined. So, be careful when they start building this thing back up because it's a lower percentage of the cap as we go with Mahomes here. I think you have to be really careful. The Daniel Joneses of the world, like you said, taking an upside bet on Jordan Love because we haven't seen him, in my opinion, is a better bet than Daniel Jones 4 years in, still waiting. That's a very dangerous profile. And frankly, like I was looking back, it's almost like Geno Smith, as someone that like he completely bottomed out. But I'm trying to think back to quarterbacks that like Daniel Jones has played 4 years. This wasn't like Geno Smith got benched, and that's a truly aberrational scenario years down the line. And then you get some quarterbacks that didn't pan out for 3 or 4 years. Part of that is they got off to a slow start because they were like backups or, such low drafted guys, Tony Romo's of the world and things like that, or Matt Schaub, like they were legitimately blocked. But I think it's just, the fact that you've played that much and it's still not coming together. And like you said, how many outs do they have to truly build around and fix everything they need fixed around him? And now that you paid, it's going to get more difficult by the year. And it just seems like this is locking the Giants into a bad scenario. And I think, again, dynasty-wise, you got to be careful about juicing players when we do have a decent sample size built up of here's what they are. Because when you start going against trend lines and against what probability and historically things happen, the whole betting on outliers, we say that monthly, if not more. You got to be truly careful about that.
Sure, for sure. And what's funny, like when you look at the Daniel Jones thing, still hasn't thrown for 7 yards an attempt in a season, right?
Not great, Bob.
I mean, what are we doing here?
Exactly. What are we doing here? That's and just a couple bookkeeping things, because again, generally the players that would warrant being out there and having high level attention in the free agent market, they aren't getting there. Josh Jacobs, tag. Tony Pollard, tag. We got Evan Ingram, tag. Again, they generally don't leave.
Yeah.
They generally don't leave. So that's just a reminder for folks when you get all excited about their situation changing. If they get truly out there, it's probably a flag and not a positive one.
Yeah. This harkens back to a moment in season where we were discussing, do you take a second right now for Geno Smith? And I said, I think that's a bad decision. I think if you were to sort of apply the lesson that you just said, which is there's inertia with these things stay the same. You kind of like, if that's your prior on these things, right?
Why would Seattle let him get out of the building if he's playing at a top 10 level? Why on earth would Seattle let him get out of the building? That's kind of, and again, it's hard, you can get some outlier stuff, but especially at quarterback, it's hard. That's why I like the whole Brock Purdy thing, right? I mean, it's easy to say, well, look at that guy. I mean, he was drafted, at 200 and something in the draft. Well, again, they don't come in and they don't play well and they don't even get to that point. So it's just like, this whole, and here's the other thing. What's the urgency of shipping off quarterbacks for seconds in Superflex?
It's
because when you said that, like selling, but you have a premium position, and what do we say? Like you're lucky to get a guy with pedigree that falls to like 202 in your rookie draft that has done absolutely jack, and then you're sitting here and you're like, I need to trade Geno Smith while he's producing. It's November. I got to get out of this hot box. This is a ticking time bomb. Is literally what some people think. I got to trade him for a 24 second. It's insanity. If it turns to 0, it was still it's about process. And that was still a good bet to make, to hold him and say, it's a better chance that Seattle brings him back. He's the 2023 starter and he's probably worth more than a second. And again, how about we stop worrying so much about market, right? I mean, he was worth a second and now I can only get a third. But just evaluate the profile. If he's a starter and we saw top 10 upside and he's going to be the starter next year, what does it matter right now what he's worth? brass tacks.
Right.
He's one of the
Right.
20-something, 30-something players on your team. Not everybody has to be worth a first, and you maxed out his value, and I sold him 6 months ago because I'm the smartest guy in the room. That could make you the dumbest guy in the room. You might need Geno Smith this year.
Right.
Good thing you locked in 205 next year. Genius.
Right. Yeah.
It's not all about that. God, it drives me nuts.
It isn't. And I think like as you start, and that was something I did early on in Dynasty where I was like, oh, I can't ever lose on an asset. Well, like, what am I actually gaining by cashing it in? Is kind of the thing that I think the opposite right side of that thing is, right? And then you start thinking like you just said, you kind of take yourself through the calculus, right? And people are like, how do you not study rookies at this part of the draft? Well, or at this part of the calendar? I said, well, like, we know historically what's going to be available, like generally, right? In a normal class.
Or what
right?
we're trying to target in certain zones, like what profile we'd like to have, and let's see how the tea leaves come together with those, right?
Exactly. And so you kind of understand, and then you can, again, kind of look at the numbers, mock drafts will change, but that'll give you an idea of what's going to be sort of generally available. And then we kind of know how to price those things, right?
I bet someone's sitting there going, well, Jalen Hurts was available at 210 that year. And then they're like, well, Josh Allen was available at 204. And they're going to use those two scenarios as like seconds are hyper valuable.
Right. And
like I was talking through the FFPC format today with somebody, and they were like, "There's no way these rookie pick values that you have are correct." And I was like, first of all, FFPC is like, through my experience, non-firsts. I'm not going to say they're worthless, but you gotta keep it in a prism here. You're not going to have any elite time allegiance with these players. You draft a wide receiver at 205 of the rookie variety in FFPC. The odds of you lighting that roster spot on fire are tremendously high by the cut next March. And it's just, so it's like, I had to talk through that, where it's like, I could argue late firsts could have minimal value depending on what you're doing with that pick. And it's just, so this idea that in a traditional, deeper roster type format, that you've got to really protect 205. I mean, you can do a lot on the veteran market with that. I mean, we saw that. I mean, a few weeks ago, you probably could have got Geno Smith for that pick. And just, you can go sharpshooting. I mean, there's always quarterbacks, wide receivers that are just discount rack. So it's just, God, people want to hold on to those things. Like you just said, oh, I got to cash it in. Well, now you're without Geno Smith. So what's your quarterback plan? Yeah. He was your QB5. Okay. Well, great for you. It's a rare scenario for somebody. Right. You didn't start at one time last year. Good for you.
Yes, exactly.
What a world. All right, we got the Football Guys Dynasty Show, episode 144. Chad Parsons, Jordan McNamara. Got some good trades this week as we dive into the Dynasty trading marketplace. We got a 14-team Superflex league and Joe Burrow on the move. So top quarterback, we got the extended baselines and thresholds there with 14 teams. Traded for Jameson Williams, 102 and 209 this year.
I mean, so I don't know if you know this, Chad. Like, you can go online and you can say, like, don't sell elite players. And people are like, well, how do you possibly get them? Like, how can you, like, it is astonishing to me how available elite quarterbacks are. Like, it is just gross about how people want to sell away elite quarterbacks to rebuild. Stop doing it. Okay, if you are a listener to the show, don't stop, refrain from doing it. If you see yourself trying to sell a elite quarterback and you say the reason I'm doing it is depth, right? Throw your mouse and walk away from your computer. Okay.
Diversification. What if Joe Burrow doesn't become,
right. Put your phone in the nearest glass of water and walk away from it. Okay. Stop doing these things. You're lighting your teams on fire. On the flip side, this is a great deal, right? You deal from depth, right?
On the flip side,
you just rip the person off. But don't.
I thought you were going totally snarky. You're like, I thought you were going to give that whole speech, and you're like, "But this sell of Burrow is a great idea." I thought you were going to go like that. But this one, because 102, I thought you were going to go on some diatribe. This is QB1 of the class. You're getting a running back at 102. Watch this thing. Yeah. And you're getting Jameson Williams, who we'll see how that fits together, but a glorified rookie, 209. We just saw the value. I mean, 209, you might be able to trade for a quarterback like Geno Smith. You might be able to fix quarterback with 209. That's the thing we buried the lead on this. And 14 team, again, that enhances it merely, just more. And you have to protect that with a vice grip. I mean, again, we don't say untradeable, but there's so many flaws that we see in how these trades are put together.
Yep.
And honestly, good job on the other team. You say, I'm going to go 102, I'm going to add some stuff to it, and I'm going to go hunting. And if that meant they sent offers for Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts, and they just went down the dial. They went down the dial and they're like, I'm looking for a top 6, 7, 8, whatever that threshold was for them. And here they go. They found it.
Yes.
All right. We've got a saucy one here. One quarterback trading up to 101. We have 102, 104, and 107, all for Mr. 101.
So this brings up a good point of like being able to talk about this class a little bit more after the combine, which we haven't really done, right? It's so funny that all the combine stuff got washed away in like a day, like all that narrative, like it's all already out of the news cycle.
Aaron Rodgers might be talking. that overshines the whole combine for like 4 days. It's all combine, and then Aaron Rodgers, he was in New York. Does anyone know he was in New York?
There's planes flying, like, and then
meetings have been had. They had lunch.
Yeah. So how do you come out of the combine? Like, maybe we could take 90 seconds here to just talk about how we come out of the combine and think about like the top 7 picks in this.
It's obligatory. Yeah, we have to.
Yeah. How do you sort of, right? 101 is going to be Bijan Robinson. How do we think about the next 6 players off the board?
Well, I was going to say this. Let's do the Sesame Street. I forget what character it is, but would you say that 102 to 101 is more near or more far? Do you think it's a closer gap or a farther gap away? I would argue, and again, I think, Jordan, you would know, reading tea leaves and some of the things I've said for 2 months, that I was one of the biggest, it's Bijan, line, everybody else. And not that no one else thinks that, but just I was pretty firm in that. I would even say it's closer today than it was a week ago. Because, and part of that is, I had some big questions that needed to be answered with Jahmyr Gibbs. And I think running a 4.36, around 200 pounds, having a receiving profile like he does, I think this gives him a more enhanced chance to go in round 1. That's one of the biggest keys to the puzzle. And so you put all that together and you start putting this in a 1 quarterback, and saying that now we possibly have another, more confidently have another round 1 running back. I don't feel as good about the wide receivers, but the 101 versus 102, I believe it's shrinking. So that's what makes this truly interesting. Like some of these deals that I saw a while ago, where it's like, oh, I traded 106 and 109 for 101. Well, you're just stealing. Like you're just taking an asset, whether you use it or not. I mean, that just shouldn't happen. Now here, 2, 4, and 7. That is a lot. It's not 4, 7, and 10. This is 2, 4, and 7. So that's what struck me. You're moving 1 spot. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot. I think if this is super flex, I'd be more apt to do it, just because you're going to be able to pull down a little bit more with 4 and 7.
Right.
The question I have is like, are you giving away from going from Bijan Robinson to going to Jahmyr Gibbs, right? If that's your 2. Sure. And if he's a first rounder, right? If he's a first round running back, he should be your 2, right? There's no receiver that you can put over him. Is that like, what's the best we can hope for at his size and his receiving ability? And yeah, he comes in and runs wild, right? And he's got an awesome receiving profile, but he's still a 200-pound running back, right? Like, what's the best is he like Alvin Kamara light? Is that kind of what we're hoping for, right? Is that in our range of outcomes? And if like, are we going to trade away Zeke, right? What I don't want to do is get back to the Zeke year where you went 102 and you're like, where you were at 101 and then you went to 102 and it was actually ended up being a huge gap. And then it was like a disaster after that, right? Unless you took
2016 is a very good comparison, I feel, because we have a Zeke. He's not going to go probably top 5 in the draft, but he's viewed in that prism. And then you basically have everybody else. And it probably turns out a little better than that, but wide receivers faded a little bit. We didn't really have a consensus there. Parallel to 2016. Running backs, they lack pedigree. We saw day 3 guys getting pumped up. That absolutely could happen in this year, especially in 1 quarterback. And especially if you don't have 2 tight end or some big premiums like, 2 PPR and things like that to give late first more viability for maybe going that direction. But yeah, that drop down and the 200 pounds, like you said, if he does not get optimized, and let's not forget Alvin Kamara was a bigger player, and I personally don't like that comp, just because he definitely looked more of the can handle a workload, and Jahmyr Gibbs, it's more of a projection. So if he doesn't get in the right system, used the right way, and really peppered with high volume, which could occur, but that's, you still have to have a requisite amount of rushing, there. So, but I would say this, if you get to the NFL draft and Jahmyr Gibbs goes in the first round, this deal, I think on its outset and on profile perspective will look pretty good on the 247 side. Now,
if he goes
Gibbs
40 overall.
Yeah, see, that's the part. So if he doesn't get round one, then again, I think, and I always say this phrase, bird dog seat. I think in general, you want to be in the bird dog seat because we feel good about Bijan Robinson. He already tested, he checked everything, and he was already checking stuff before. It's a matter of how high he's going to go. And he has the profile of just basically being that next guy that, hey, you wake up, in October mock drafts or simulations of dynasty drafts, and you're like, or November, December, it's like, where do we sit? Well, he's firmly in the first round of startups. And right now, the 101 is what? Late first, right? I mean, is that? I haven't been tracking one quarterbacks, so it might be even mid. I don't know. But the point is, it's close to running back one overall. Yes, close or right there. So it's a proxy. It's a proxy for that. And so that's consolidating down, and that's hard to get. That's a player that you're getting at 21 years old. I say you're getting the whole thing. You're getting the whole apple. Yeah. So it's, yeah, it sounds like a tremendous amount. And honestly, here's what we would say, right? Like, there's other ways to do this too. You had 2, 4, and 7. I wonder from a team building standpoint if there was other things to do, but I get doing this because 101 is hyper flexible too.
Right. I wonder if you were to say to me, instead of this, right, if it was 101 and you were to say, I'll give you a 102 and let's call it one of the receivers from last year. I've actually seen people souring on Olave, which is lunacy to me, right? Like Drake London. If it was one of those guys, right, I kind of and I'm just sort of pairing hey, would I trade those two sort of mid first for one of those receivers? I would feel more comfortable doing that. I don't know. We're going back to the well of we're going to start drafting in the middle of a first round that we don't necessarily love the receivers in it. We could really look back on this deal. If I'm sitting on 101, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this right now.
On the other side though, would you rather do this, or what if you offered 2 and 4 for Jefferson? Is that in play?
Yeah. I mean, I think so.
Because two is what, an early third startup pick or late second? I mean, in a one quarterback, you're probably talking maybe even as high as mid second.
Right.
So I don't know. Right. Seems like it might be in play.
I think it's a lot. If I'm sitting at 1, I have a really hard time giving it up. But I also think you could maybe do better than just giving it's weird because I think you could maybe even do better with the picks than it is. Can, like you said, can 2 of those get you a Justin Jefferson? Can it get you? And then you can hold on.
Well, you said, I saw one that was Olave for what, 104 and some ancillary thing. So so it's so if you get this deal from 101 and then 4 turns into Olave, 7 turns into something else, you still have 102.
Correct.
I don't know. You could. So I think if you do it that way, yes, this could work. But 101 also is a blank check to kind of do anything.
Right.
So you got to be really careful.
Yeah, I think as I'm kind of sitting here right now at 101, I'd be really reticent to do this deal, and I would almost, if it was the person offering it to me, I'd be kind of bring me something that you got with 104 and 107 that can really move the needle instead of giving me picks. I think would be kind of how I'd think about this, or if as a proxy for how I would think about a trade involving moving down one spot. Right, give me some sort of either near elite asset or something trending in an elite way like Olave or Drake London, something like that to make it move the needle. And like you said, is something in that range going to get you a player very close to Justin Jefferson that you don't, or to Bijan Robinson that's not named Bijan Robinson, and you actually can hold on to one of those picks, because I think that's possible too, right? So I kind of look at it both ways. I think it's an interesting sort of debate.
Yeah, and with your team dynamic, I mean, we're coming through a prism of we're pretty comfortable. Even if today your running back situation doesn't look that great. Like you got a lot of like, I don't know how this is going to look week one.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of embrace that and we're okay with it. And we kind of know how to handle it. So thinking that like I need Bijan Robinson to fix my running back group wouldn't be a thought we have. It doesn't mean we don't draft him. It doesn't mean that he's not a part of, our dynasty profile or anything. It just means that wouldn't necessarily be plan A, that you have to get a build around 21-year-old high cost cornerstone guy to fix everything and push everybody down. We talk about that a wide receiver, like that makes life easier. But running back, you can do it a variety of different directions. And then the other part is, we don't talk about trades like this very often in one quarterback. So that we would be talking about it a little bit differently in Superflex in terms of how to handle those picks, what, things to do other than trading for 101. So I think those are two other aspects to this deal of just, you don't need to fix running back by being hyper aggressive through the rookie draft. You can do it more towards volume. Again, things are going to get clarified. If it's not overly a deep roster, you can do it through the waiver wire and through cheap trading as well for profiles that there's going to be plenty around rookie draft time where you might be able to trade like, I don't like the board. You trade back from 205 to like 212 and you get a running back where you're like, I'm just picking up, I'll pick up Miles Sanders, or, some profile that the next 2 months don't go that well. And all of a sudden you pick them up for basically free when you get to your rookie draft. So ideas like that, hunting on the cheap for profiles and, backup guys with upside and things like that.
Yes.
All right, we got one more dynasty trade here. It's a 1 quarterback deal, and Tom Brady getting a little juice. We didn't mention him as part of our barrage, but frankly, we didn't mention Aaron Rodgers much either, other than in passing. I don't know if you've noticed this, Jordan, but Alvin Kamara, and we're following him closely. You're on Team Legal, and we see a lot of legal discussion with Football Guys and Drew Davenport and, all this. So Alvin Kamara is one that a lot of people now are just thinking he's done. DONE done. Like the good production is gone. Like he's going to be suspended for a chunk or maybe all. Like there's a lot of, you got your pitchfork out, you're walking around, and this is it for Alvin Kamara, who's been a top 15 guy in adjusted points per game every single year of his career, over and over and over again. And yes, he's on the older side now because he's done what I just said over and over and over again. And then Tom Brady, people are thinking he's coming back. So this is a 1 quarterback trade. Matthew Stafford, Alvin Kamara. I mean, talk about some ugly market right now with those 2 players for Tom Brady, Donald Parham, a throw-in, 212 and a 24 second.
Yeah. I mean, like if Alvin Kamara never plays again, what have you lost?
212.
Right.
You lost 212 and 1 quarterback.
Right. Let's say that, I don't know, let's just proxy it out and say,
it's a day 3
Stafford's
guy.
worth 212 and Kamara's worth
Sure.
a future second. You've basically lost a future second on it, right? Brady had an amazing tweet today. It was like people saying that I'm not, or an Instagram post or something like that, some social media post that said, people are talking about coming back, have never adopted a kitten for their daughter, which apparently is what he's going through. And he's like, the amount of time commitment on that just makes it impossible for me to come back and play football. I found that pretty funny.
Wow.
I don't think Brady's coming back.
Okay.
I don't. So I think
what percentage do you put on that?
2%.
2% is coming back. Okay.
Yeah. So
I'm higher, so I'm gonna go 20%, but I'm still, it's not like it's 100. Yeah.
You're a man of the people on the percentage too. So
but still 20%. I just
reassess. They're gonna readjust.
20% chance 47-year-old Tom Brady ends up playing 1 more season in the sun for Team X.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is so Brady obviously. So Brady isn't moving the needle for you. So you would argue in this that the 2 best pieces in the deal are on one side.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Now Stafford is a lot more replaceable in 1 quarterback, but you could say, hey, if he helps you, if he adds to another maybe uncertain quarterback situation, he does have upside, and you're like, I'll pay 212 for that. But yeah, Kamara is not like if he fell from easily going for first to now, like I've heard a lot of people just say, man, I'd love to take a second for him. So just know, profile buying, and we are definitely one of the, you want to give distressed asset signals up, smoke signals up into the air on guys that have been hyper productive and say that they're done. that's dangerous. Assuming that guys are a zero at this point, and we're not talking about like I need to take any third for Denzel Mims. Like we're not talking about like a guy that literally has done next to nothing. I mean, someone that has been a tried and true dynasty stalwart and producer. Man, I can't imagine owning Alvin Kamara and just running out the door like this.
Yeah, I just think it's almost like goes back to that Geno thing. It's like, all right, even if he
don't mind missing, right? Don't mind missing.
Lost, right? Like
if Alvin Kamara is suspended for half the year, they don't throw him balls anymore, and then in 2024 he's just out on the scrap heap, and the NFL collectively decides you're done. Like I wouldn't feel bad about that. I'd be like, I didn't see this coming. He is such a trend breaker for how productive he's been at this age, and for a pass catching guy to age disgracefully at 28, 29 years old is a relative surprise. And to be unstartable, unusable, even if he's a running back 2, as we kind of view him in the next couple of years, that's worth 212. That's worth a future second. Come on.
Yeah, and the other thing too, like if you just look at some of the numbers on him, like I think it's gotten a little bit carried away. And again, they've been extremely run centric, and I would say the last like 2 to 3 years they've gotten extremely run centric, considering where we sort of envisioned Kamara sort of early prime. They've sort of gone away from that, but now they just added a quarterback that I think is a substantial upgrade over anything they've had dating back to probably the last year of Drew Brees. And so, that's probably going to signal a shift into the passing game. But even assuming that they don't make that change, right? Running back 8 in expected points per game last year. Again, underperformed that. Running back 13 in actual points per game, but yards per route run was 1.66. Again, that's still a top, like that's close to a top 10 percentile type.
Derek Carr's not going to hurt him. Derek Carr's not going to hurt him. Like he's a get through his reads and take the 6-yard gain type guy.
Exactly.
And to be fair, I don't think that Kamara had that guy last year.
I don't think so either. So I'm on the Kamara side of I think he can bounce back. Right.
And
again, on the other side too, like I think generally like Kamara hasn't proven to us that he can't play anymore. And when you have seen players, we'll call this the Saquon Barkley rule. When you have seen players do elite things, right, and they haven't proven to you that they can't play anymore, you just have to be in on that, right? I think you have to be in on that when it's discounted, right? And even if it involves sort of swinging and missing on a future second, that's fine. That's the bet that you should make because the payoff is a lot damn higher than a future second.
And one more time, this is probably another one where people say, well, 212, is a young player, it's insulated, and Alvin Kamara, even if he ends up being productive this year for part of a year, now I'm stuck with him. Now he's going to be worth even less in 12 months. Yeah, but he was in your lineup. So you don't have to there's no clock that says Alvin Kamara can't be on your team 12 months from now, which I think a lot of people, this whole did I ever tell you, Jordan, the thing that opened my eyes about this? There were 2 players, and I know it was a different position, that really opened my eyes. I was fully in this, I got to get value for guys, years and years ago before they retire, before they turn useless, before I drop them to the dynasty waiver wire and no one picks them up. It's crickets. And what got me over it were 2 guys. First was Tony Gonzalez. He kept playing. And I think at 37, he was still in the top 15 aggregating tight end catches for the Falcons as one of the main 1 or 2 pieces on that passing game, long after people had given up on him. I think at some point he hit the waiver wire and it's I'll pick him up, this old tight end. And then Jason Witten was the other one. How about this? He even left the NFL, came back, and he was streamable / startable / PPR aggregating when he came back. So, and those were productive players that maintained productivity. And then it's just you put them in, just right back into that recipe, right back into that formula. And I know running back's a little different. It's going to fall off a little quicker, but man, to walk away from that and you just for folks that are out there Khalil Herbert, he's going to be a game changer. I'm just picking a random player, but just a lot of uncertainty, a guy without pedigree. And it's I know plenty of people out there probably right now in terms of bets, Khalil Herbert, week 1 starter. This is going to be great. Alvin Kamara, I don't want any part of him. That literally, those 2 statements converge for a lot of dynasty GMs, I think. And it can really get people in trouble. The what if, or Tyler Algier. Like, what's going to happen? Like, oh, this is going to be great. He's going to be a cornerstone guy next to Devonta Freeman. There's a really good chance that what I just said does not happen at all. so you got to be very, and not to say it can't happen, but the odds of Alvin Kamara putting up even one more top 24 season is so much higher. Right. And yet he's probably cheaper. So just a general reminder there. Yes. All right, let's rapid fire through a couple of Dynasty quotes from the Football Guys Dynasty Forum. Always thanks for everyone that contributes to the completed Dynasty trades and a lot of thoughts and feedback there. I think we can all agree that the 2024 draft is going to be the greatest draft class in history. Well, until 2025, of course.
Until we get to February and everyone hates it. And then people start running in spandex and then everyone gets all, turned on to the class again.
No, you know what I love though is that the NFL draft community is the opposite. NFL draft is everyone's great. Gold star participation trophy. Everyone wins. In this soccer game, no one kept score. And then we get to Dynasty Twitter and it's everyone is horrible. This class stinks. Hopefully you traded away your picks 2 months ago. That's the cool thing to say.
Yes, exactly.
But yet the NFL draft is telling us all these guys are great. It's a huge, deep running back class, 4 tight ends in the first round. Like, it's going to be awesome. And then, Dynasty takes that and just says, oh, look at all these subsized guys. They're going to be bad. I just find that disconnect pretty fun to watch. The cheapest way to acquire a stud is through the rookie draft. It won't always work out, but it's an advantage when it does.
I mean, it's an advantage when it does, but we've talked about in this show,
studs are gettable.
Studs are always gettable. And I go back to thinking, like, I was even doing some
It may not be the one guy though. Like if you have your tractor beam on one guy, let's say I want to get a stud quarterback and you limit it to one name, then yes, it may be tough to get them in one particular league because you're dealing with one GM and one team.
Right.
But when you have that,
yeah. And I totally agree with that. But like, if you sort of broaden it out and say, hey, listen, I'm going to try and go out and get a top 10 quarterback, right? Like then you have a lot more options, right? And then you have someone that's probably in like the, maybe I'll rebuild with some I mean, like I saw just today, I saw someone give, I believe it was 105 and 109 and Kenny Pickett for Justin Herbert. And I'm like, where are the additional firsts in this deal? Like, I don't understand how this deal happens. But again, this is very simple. If you get to the middle of the first round and there's a top, there's a quarterback there, right? Just look at the most scarce asset. And most of the time it's a quarterback that has pedigree. That's the most scarce asset in those ranges. And you just say, I'm going to take him. And I don't think he's a long-term solution for me, but at some point in the next 18 months, I'm going to be able to put him in a deal with additional assets that's going to get me an elite quarterback. And somebody is going to fall for that, right? Someone will be on the other side of that deal. There's always someone on the other side of that deal. So just kind of, again, it's not, maybe it doesn't feel great at the moment, right? Taking Kenny Pickett at 106 didn't win a Dynasty Bikini runway show last year. But you know what? Like the team that just traded him for Herbert, probably going to get a good chance at winning a Dynasty title in the next couple of years, right? So I think that's the thing that like, I sort of look at these things like, how do I get a stud, right? Like I want to sort of be always thinking about, I want to get the next elite guy. And again, this is kind of the NBA basketball mindset that I just like, I'm always in that of like, how do I get an elite player? How do I get an elite player? How do I get an elite player? And I think it's just drafting the right type of assets and then saying, okay, I need to put them in deals to get them, right? I want to be on that side of those deals.
So last question then. Does that mean within the prism of this rookie class, based on what you just said and profiles and the possibilities in the future, I will elicit names like Trey Lance, Justin Fields, and others where you can have major questions about what lies ahead for said players like that NFL-wise, and yet we've seen pretty darn good insulation, considering 2 roads of just picking those 2 players. But does that mean someone like Anthony Richardson for you in terms of a profile bet? Now, we don't know where he ends up going in Superflex drafts in general, but is he the type of profile where you say he has to develop as a quarterback and progress and all this stuff? We didn't really see a Justin Fields progress, and yet he's a top. I see him go mid first in these Superflex startups.
Yeah,
all he did was run around. He ran around for a year.
Yeah. I'm of a couple of minds of this. Right. On the one hand, it gives me a lot of pause because I know, and we look at the data, right? We look at the charts, the Analytics Dynasty team building guide, right? that go over to the site. I'll put it in the link. FBG gets you 10% off. That's the pitch for the week. We can look at the charts and sort of know what profiles that we're looking at, the odds of success and all that stuff. And you want to know what? We know those things. You and I know those things. The listeners to the show know those things. And you know what? No one else cares. And so I have a really hard time sort of taking a negative odds bet. It drives me crazy. But at the same time, I know I'm not really taking a production bet. I'm taking an asset bet, right? I think that's sort of there's a blend of, and again, I think, analytics can be a dirty word. There's a difference between sort of understanding the odds, right? And sort of, and that's the science to it, and sort of the understanding kind of the market, which is the art part of this, that I think, would I rather take, right? I think it's more likely that a first round wide receiver is probably going to make a difference than a average top 10 quarterback, right? That's as kind of a general rule. I think that's right. Which one of those guys am I going to be able to put in a deal to get an elite quarterback? It's the quarterback, right? So I kind of come back to this class and I'm like, all right, at what point am I not taking like a top 10 quarter? I think there's going to be four.
This quarterback class could be a weapon because if the quarterback's on the clock for you and just superimpose that as that 103, 105, 107, whatever, just anywhere that one of them is available and they all went top 10, which I think we're trending in that direction.
Yep.
That, like you said, that pick where right now 105 may not be the weapon. You may have tried, well, I'm trying to get Justin Herbert. I gave, offered 105 and something else. That may not work. But when you get on the clock and Richardson's there or Levis is there or whatever, all of a sudden it may become a weapon. Because now it is maybe top 15 dynasty quarterback X and whatever you're adding for Justin Herbert.
Right.
So it can be weaponized late April.
Absolutely. And I mean, as I sit here right now, I kind of wonder, again, I like Jackson Smith and Jigba, right? I think he's the wide receiver one of this class as I sit here right now. If four quarterbacks go in the top 10 of the draft and Bijan Robinson's a first round running back, and let's even give Jamar Gibbs, he goes 25 overall or late 20s, whatever. He goes in the first round. Right. What are the odds that it's going to be Bijan Robinson at 1 and then 4 straight quarterbacks?
Right. Or just the top 6 is 2 running backs and 2
right.
quarterbacks. Right.
And what percentage of drafts do you think those 4 quarterbacks are gone in the top 5? And then what?
I don't think they will. There'll be a gap. Someone will go wide receiver, and there will be some quarterback. We already see, I personally think it's going to be Will Levis is going to be the Josh Allen
Daniel
faller
Jones guy this year.
Yeah. Now does it get all the way to the second round? I'm not sure about that, but I do think it'll probably be later first because Richardson, I thought he might be that guy, but I think just with his workout, the momentum, monorail, there's just too much here. I don't know if he slips NFL wise, but I just don't think dynasty wise he's going to slip. So you'll probably get 3 in the top. Let's be conservative, top 5 or 6. Now where Levis goes beyond that, that's more of the question mark.
Yeah.
So, and here's the wrinkle though. What if Richardson goes to Seattle, right? What if he I don't know if Detroit would be viewed the same way, but what if he goes to a block situation? Is now quote unquote blocked? Do you get a little bit of a discount? So that would be the one wrinkle for me where he gets, because we've seen this before. You get the pedigree, but then if you're blocked a little bit, people are getting antsy. They want their guy to play. Right. So that would be the one thing that might cause Richardson to slip. But yeah, I think looking in terms of the timetable of you may want to get it done and you're trying to offer picks now. But I really do think, the final theme of this show would be those picks become more powerful when they're attached to names. And I know it takes super patience because you got to go all the way to your rookie draft. Minimum, you got to get past the NFL draft. But that's really when the true power of those picks can come all the way home, like you said, to get a deal done and to sharpshoot, a headhunt for a major major quarterback and major cornerstone player.
Can I ask one word answer? You're allowed a one word answer. The last name of one player. If you are on the clock and you get the quarterback 1 pick and you're the GM of a team, what quarterback are you taking in this class? It's quarterback 1.
I'm going to answer with one word, but I just wanted to clarify. So I'm the NFL GM, correct?
Yes. If you're the NFL GM and you're sitting
NFL
there,
GM,
right?
Which again,
Houston
we
or
know
whoever
it's about
gets-
job
whoever sits at
job
one.
security. Job security is a huge factor to what this answer is. Stroud.
Okay.
That's who I'd be picking. I feel like he has the best combination of everything that means I will be having my job for 2 to 3 years.
Yes.
I think he gives me the best chance.
All right.
All right, that's going to do it. I am off the hot seat. Starting to sweat a little bit. In this episode, we discussed quarterbacks, as always, moving the needle in Dynasty, moving the needle in the NFL. Talk a little NFL draft. Got Jordan out of here. It's early checks watch, early March. I think we're going to progress here. This is good things. Good things for the next 4 to 6 weeks as we talk about the NFL draft and rookie drafts even more. And we also talked about some interesting Dynasty trades, the value of 101. If you have a lot of first-round picks, Alvin Kamara, his situation in Dynasty as well. I'm Chad Parsons. He's Jordan McNamara. And until next time, good luck in your Dynasty leagues.